Councillor Ted Clark, Councillor for Shropshire Councillor for Basin Hill plus 2 ancillary areas which I share with partners.
Pop over to John. If you introduce please the officers.
Yes, John Shaw, Senior Planning Officer in Northern Team.
Jane Lehman, Senior Planning Officer in the Northern Team.
Philip Mallon, New Planning Manager.
Miranda Garrard, Solicitor.
Shelley Davis, Committee Officer.
Thank you, everybody. Okay, now we'll go. We'll start item 1. Apologies for absence. We have no absences, do we? No. So, minutes to confirm the minutes of the meeting of the Northern Planning Committee held on the 11th of October 2022. Minutes to follow.
Move.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. Right. Public questions. Got any public questions?
No.
We haven't received any. For disposal of community interest, does anybody have any? Yes, Matt. Should have voted.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, firstly, I'm a twin-hatted member on Shrewsbury Town Council, and also I am the division member for items 5 through to 16. I will make a statement on the first one, and then I will go back in the room.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Ted.
Thank you, Chair. Excuse me. I'm on one of the late items, Oakland Basin Hill. I'm the member for Basin Hill. I'll go to the back of the room when this one is deliberated and speak if I may in support of it.
Thank you, Ted. Joyce.
Item 17, I'm your local member. I'll speak on the item and then I'll move to the back of the room.
Thank you, Joyce. Right, item 5. Pavement, Claremont Bank, and I presume you are leading on this. Okay.
Yeah, you can do that. This is the first of 12 applications on the agenda for the erection of 6 BT hubs proposed to be located at different locations within Shrewsbury Town Centre. Each proposed hub is over 1 metre wide and just under 3 metres tall, almost 1 metre higher than a standard call box. Each hub will display a static digital display screen on both sides, measuring approximately 1.7 metres high and almost 1 metre wide. That's an example of what the hubs will look like. In addition to the digital advertising space on both sides, which will be sold by BT to help raise revenue to fund the hubs, they will also provide telecommunications equipment and will replace existing public call boxes in 4 of the 6 locations. The hubs would help BT to address their universal service obligation for the provision of alternative call services where they wish to remove existing public call boxes. The hubs will provide, amongst other benefits, the following features: secure power-only USB ports for rapid device charging, free phone calls, direct emergency call button, ultra-fast public and encrypted Wi-Fi. An interactive tablet provides a series of icons with access to local services, information, maps and wayfaring, for example, and improved coverage and capacity to boost 4G and 5G with small cell technology. The key benefit to the consumer is that the small cell technology enables the hubs to act as hotspots for users and creates greater capacity in the mobile network, resulting in a smoother experience with limited drop data and calls. Members will note that the Conservation Officer and the Town Council have objected to all 12 applications that are recommended for refusal due to their size and adverse visual impact. The agent has been asked whether BT have an alternative smaller hub more suited to a historic town centre such as Shrewsbury, and have advised that they don't have an alternative at this present time. Officers do wish to highlight that although recommending the first applications of this kind in Shrewsbury for refusal, Shropshire Council remains committed to adopting and encouraging inward digital infrastructure investment, particularly through full fibre and small cell technology, and this will form an intrinsic part of the solution for a smarter and connected society. However, any solution needs to be balanced against the visual impact of a proposal having regard to the context of the site and the scale and appearance of existing surrounding development, and the impact on the character and appearance of the conservation area and the setting of nearby listed buildings. Both planning permission and advert consent are required for each of the hubs and their large advertising screens that are on both sides. In determining the planning applications, paragraph 202 of the NPPF states that where a development proposal will lead to less than substantial harm to the significance of a designated heritage asset, this harm must be weighed against the public benefits of the proposal. However, the advert regulations do not allow the benefits of a proposal to be taken into consideration, and any application for advert consent can only be determined having regard to the impact on visual amenity of the area and impact on public safety. Although the proposed hub is the same for each of the 6 sites, the 12 applications must each be considered and determined separately, having regard to the individual location and setting and the type of application. So the first of the 12 is at the top of Claremont Bank. It's the planning permission, and the proposed hub is to be situated on a recently widened and improved pavement at the top of Claremont Hill. There is no existing call box in this location, and the hub will be located opposite the listed St Chad's and the historic Quarry Park and listed gates. The plan up on the board at the moment, the red area is the pavement and all the blue are the listed buildings, including the St Chad's there where the big circle is and the Quarry Park opposite. If you want to move through the slides for me, Philip. These aren't very clear. This is the existing site showing that the pavement is relatively clear, and then there's the proposed site plan showing the location of the hub to the north. If you go through now, that in the bottom corner is a photo montage showing the hub in place. Next one. And this is the street scene at the moment. Quite an open pavement area there, and it's where that man was in that picture. Actually, I think is roughly it's going to be sited in front of those cycle hoops. Pardon?
Church next door.
Yeah, and that's the other way. So it's going to be sited.
Is that the green one?
Yes. Yeah. The recommended reason for refusal is that it is considered that the proposed hub, due to its scale, design and digital display screen and siting in its prominent location, and having regard to the character of the area in which it will be located, would be detrimental to the visual amenity of the locality and have an adverse visual impact on the character and appearance of the street scene, the setting of nearby listed buildings, and this part of Shrewsbury Town Centre conservation area. Full consideration of this site by both the Conservation Officer and the Case Officer is provided within the report and includes the balancing exercise required by paragraph 202 of the NPPF. Officers would therefore wish to add to the reason for refusal, because I noted earlier today that this particular application hasn't got this sentence in its reason for refusal, and that is that the harm to the significance of these heritage assets is considered to be less than substantial harm, and it's considered that the public benefits do not outweigh the harm. So I noted earlier today that this is the only one of the 12 of the 6 planning applications that didn't have that in the reason for refusal. So yeah, open to any questions about this particular site, and this is the planning application first for this site.
Right, well, Nat, speak first, yeah, please.
Thank you, Chair. I can say from the outset I'm in complete agreement with the officer's report and also the views of the Conservation Officer, and where relevant throughout these applications, the Highways Department. These are the wrong size and quite often in the wrong place for this town. It's not that I'm against the principle, as quite rightly pointed out by the Case Officer. The Shrewsbury does need additional connectivity, but I have to say the centre of town has been struggling to get fibre broadband for many years now. So somehow, and as one of the residents rightly points out, how come these things can magically find 1 gigabytes per second? Or is that just because, is it because one part of BT isn't talking to another part of BT, or is it because actually the job was always doable and now it is when it suits them? So one has to be a little cynical here. Nonetheless, I won't take up committee's time too long on this, because I say it's been eloquently put extremely well by the Case Officer. But I would urge committee that what we need to do is tell BT to basically go away and think again. We need something smaller, more in scale, and yes, by all means, let's have this connectivity to benefit people. But also, while you're about it, Can we have 1 gigabyte per second throughout the centre of Shrewsbury as well, if you're able to do that? Thank you very much.
Thank you now. Right, we'll do the floor now. Gary's indicated.
Thank you, Chairman. Partly echo what Matt's saying. My concern relates to all the footpaths. We've just spent many millions of pounds widening all these footpaths, narrowing the highways to make it safer for pedestrians and in the post-COVID world. We're now proposing putting these great monstrosities on right in the middle of all these footpaths that we've just spent all these many millions of pounds doing up and making look safe and quite attractive. So my suggestion would be that we ask BT to go away, design a smaller unit, even if it's a single facing unit that can be put in against a shop front or on the street corner where it's not a trip hazard for visually disabled people, etc., and it's more in keeping with the character of the town. But 100% nothing near to any of the conservation buildings. There's plenty of commercial space in Shrewsbury that they can put these units near to that isn't going to take away from the look of the conservation areas of Shrewsbury. And I propose that we accept those recommendations and refuse all 12.
Thank you, Gary. Vince?
I'm happy to second that, Chair. There's nothing being said, so I'm not going to say it again, but I actually disagree with. I mean, if you look at this particular picture here, and then you can imagine one of these billboards, because in effect that's what it is. It's more of an advertising hoarding for BT than it is a communication hub, frankly. And I suspect that to be able to get these things funded, they need to charge a reasonable amount of money, and the advertising has to be of a certain size to be able to do that. I don't like it. It's not appropriate. I'm happy to second.
Thank you, Vince. Mike? You want to keep it?
Thank you, Chair. Is the proposal to say no to all 12? No.
We're taking that.
Right, sorry, I thought someone said all
No, we
12.
can't do that, I'm afraid.
Right, no, okay, that's okay then. Because I just wanted to say that I think in certain locations, we should consider allowing these because of the benefits that they do bring with free phone calls and improving the connectivity to the internet. Also the access it gives to charities, the potential for air quality monitoring, noise monitoring, etc. And also where they are replacing the telephone kiosks, not the red ones, but the modern style that are now looking decidedly tired. Quite often they're vandalised or have scruffy advertising pasted to them anyway. If these are replacing those, then I think we should seriously consider in those locations allowing these to be installed.
Thank you, Mike. Did you indicate, David?
Yeah.
Thanks, Chair. I just wanted to say that I'm totally in sympathy with what Councillor Ishwood was just saying, but the problem is the scale of these units is far too much for Shrewsbury, for the conservation areas. They're too big, they're too intrusive, and we need BT to come back and do the things that you suggest, but with a much smaller unit. So I'm totally against this. And I might say when we discuss the town council's universal, vote against this and complete agreement. So I think we should reject this today, and go back to BT and say, let's have something which is more amenable, more suitable for Shrewsbury.
Jeff?
Thank you, Chair. I agree with the conversation. I think these are totally out of keeping with certain areas, and in particular, it would be detrimental to put something like that in that area. There may be benefits, but I don't think the benefits come anywhere near the problems that they would cause. They're going to attract vandalism, they're going to be an obstacle, and they're going to look absolutely horrible. So I too would like to object to this application. Thank you.
Yes, a little more to add to that, because I support what's been said for all the reasons, and except to say that looking at that shot there, it's the size that you're introducing advertising in a place where there is none. And the word billboard came out, for instance, a while back, I think. And, we don't need a billboard there. And so that, yes, scale, size, and all that sort of stuff, but it's the advertising and raising revenue for BT to pay for their installation of these monstrosities, really. So I don't think there should be any truck with this one at all. Thank you.
Thank you. I think you're on the feel of the room. David, just switch off that mic, please. No, the one to your left. Thank you. So, any questions to the planning officer? No? So in that case, we're going to do a recorded vote to start with, are we?
It would be a roll call vote, but unless you want to just take a show of hands.
If you're all
The reason
happy.
for the roll call votes was so that we could see that we counted all the votes correctly, but I suspect if everyone is content that this will be easy to do.
Is everybody happy to do?
Yeah.
Show of hands? In that case, all those in favour of the officer's recommendation?
Could I just,
Oh, sorry.
with that added bit to the
Oh, sorry, the
recommended
added bit,
reason for
which is,
refusal, do you have to note that? Yeah, sorry.
No, you do.
Okay, just say it again.
Okay, can you do it again, please? Show of hands, please. All in favour of the officer's recommendation?
Unanimous,
Unanimous? Okay, so we can move swiftly on to the next one then, item 7. 6, oh, sorry, 6, pavement Claremont Bank.
Right, this next application is for advert consent for the same hub in the same location at the top of Flint Hill that you've just refused planning permission for. This one, highways have objected to the application, and therefore the recommended reason for refusal, in addition to adverse impact on visual amenity, also refers to the reduction of the footway to an unacceptable width, resulting in potential adverse impact on pedestrian safety, because the advert regulations require you to consider public pedestrian safety, public safety generally, and visual amenity. They're the two issues that you determine advert applications on. So it's exactly the same
Yeah, so, thank you.
proposal, but
Unless in
it's an advert.
discussion, choice is indicated, so. Victor?
For all previous reasons and the extra reason, I'd like to go for refusal.
I'll second.
Take a show of hands.
I was going to second, but I was going to do it waiting my turn.
You can strike him, as you-
Accept the remonstration.
Okay, thank you, so everyone. All those in favour of the officer's recommendation, please show.
Unanimous, Chair.
Unanimous again. Okay, move on to item 7, Smithfield Road.
This next application for planning permission for a hub at the junction of Smithfield Road with Chester Street in a location where there is no existing call box and where the hub would be higher than the bus shelter in this location. It will be situated in front of a building considered to be a non-designated heritage asset and with important listed buildings in the vicinity. Officers recommend refusal in accordance with the officer report and the reason given in the report. Philip just wants to scroll through the slides. It's got that's the location. That shows you the Smithfield buildings surrounding in blue. Existing and proposed. There's their photo montage in the bottom corner. You can sort of see the hub behind the tree there. And then that's where it's going in that space between the trees. And these hubs are actually higher than that bus shelter. Yeah, they're big, they're
Huge.
standard doors 2 meters. They're a meter higher than a door.
Okay.
Yeah, there's another slide. I don't know if there was another. So it's going that gap there, yeah.
Looks different on there, isn't it? Anyway. Thank you. So, choice is indicated.
Yeah, I'll keep quiet after this one. It's totally out of keeping with the street thing, the side dimensions, everything, despite the fact they've got dustbins there, so I would go for refusal again.
Thank you. Do I have a second? Vince's first. We got a seconder. All those in favour of the officer's recommendation? Unanimous again. Okay, we go to item 8. Smithfield Road.
Okay, the next application is for the advertisement consent for the same hub in the same location at the junction of Smithfield Road with Chester Street. This one doesn't restrict the width unacceptably. So the hub in this location is only recommended for refusal due to the adverse impact on visual amenity and not public safety. So this is just the visual amenity, the advert consents recommended for refusal.
Okay. On to the floor again. Thank you, Edward.
Well, I'll take my chance. I agree with all that's been said before about proposing this, and I think until BT come up with a nicer and a more pleasant design for historic town centre, then we shouldn't accept this either, and we propose we reject it.
Thank you. Do you think one, David?
Yeah.
Get in there.
Yeah, I can go back to the photo. You know, the photo with the montage of the signs is that,
No, the wrong way, Philip. You
Wrong
Yeah.
way.
It's in the bottom left corner there.
Yeah, I think it's, we can't really see it very well, but it's the scale of it, that's what I think, which is just extraordinary that you should be proposing such a monstrosity in the historic centre of Shrewsbury. And, you know, if somebody came along, a shop came along and said, they would have a McDonald's sign, for example, or in the middle of Shrewsbury, we'd say absolutely not. And we're going to say absolutely not in this case.
Yeah, so you second it.
So, oh yes, I'm seconding, sorry.
David. So those all in favour of the recommendation, do you want to speak for this?
Yeah, I'm finding it interesting, and Jane didn't say it this time, but in the preamble on the first application, it was stated that BT are looking to replace existing phone boxes with these, and I don't think we've seen one yet that actually replaces a phone box. So it's almost as though they're going to keep those in place now, so they can put extra ones in if they want to and increase their advertising revenue. I think if they want to put them in, they're not right. They're not right. They can be designed differently. It would have a negative impact on their ability to use them for substantial advertising. But if they're telling us that they're going to put them in where there are existing phone boxes, and yet we've yet to see one where there was an existing phone box, I think it's well, I can't really use the agricultural term, but I'm sure everybody knows what it is.
Mark?
Yeah, I can't quite see why we're brought in twice on these, because the items are together. If we refuse the first one, the second one's got to go. Refuse, surely.
They are separate applications. One is for planning permission and one is for advert consent. So you have to determine them.
We can't pass the other, can we?
Well, not really, but you have to do it that way. They've got it's got to be done in this way.
Each one.
Together, can't we?
One, couldn't you?
But if they just vote quickly, it won't take too long, will it?
I won't say, I haven't got much to say in between each of them. So.
Yeah.
We'll whiz through. Yeah.
So I'm now going to the vote. All those in favour of the officer's recommendation?
For the advert.
Unanimous, okay. We shall move to item 9.
Okay.
St Mary Street.
That's even worse. Right,
I'm going to write it, Philip.
hang on.
That's fine, yeah.
Hold on a second.
Right, this application is planning, this is the planning application for a hub to replace an existing wall box sited on the pavement opposite the Grade 1 listed St Mary's Church in St Mary's Street. Officers recommend refusal in accordance with the officer's report and the reason given. So Philip just wants to scroll through quickly.
Balance the church.
Yeah.
Look at the listed buildings down there.
The church opposite. So this one is admittedly in front of a more modern commercial type building, but you'll see in the photographs. That's their photo montage. The existing call box is there on pavement on the left, and it'll be a metre higher than that. So almost twice half again. Yeah. It's bigger than the bus.
That's the call box out.
That's the call box, yeah. And then if you click to the next picture, you can sort of see the three tubs. It's just behind the third tub, and it's a metre. Huge. Yeah, they are huge.
Oh,
The advertising, I was just.
ridiculous.
Okay,
Yeah.
right, I thought Mikey might have something to say. Mike?
Thank you, Chair. You see, this is one where I think we should allow the installation of the hub. It's in front of a very modern building. It's replacing an ugly existing modern telephone kiosk. So you're not really detracting from anything that's existing there. I mean, there's a very modern bus stop right outside the church, you know, which why didn't we install one that's all, you know, old fashioned looking, you know, because that to me spoils the look of the church far more than having a screen on the opposite side in front of the concrete and glass. So I think for the benefits that these hubs can bring, the free phone calls, the connectivity, etc., in this location, I think I propose that we allow the installation of the hub.
Thank you, Mike. Joyce, I want to ask a question.
Yeah, just a question. Just a question. The black and white building that's quite old, that's on the other picture, you can see it to the left. I forgot what that's called.
Draper's Hall, is it?
Draper's Hall, that's it. That's quite an old building, and from certain aspects, you'll be able to see this, which I think is hideous. And it will impact on the church as well. There it is, that black and white place. It's got an awful long history. So whilst I don't think that bit's a conservation area at all, I think that must impact on the conservation area. I'm assuming there's one there, Miranda.
The whole area is the conservation area.
Okay, okay.
Even the modern building
Yeah.
situated within.
Well, I no, I absolutely would refuse that.
Right, so we have a, sorry, Jim.
I'm just going to note that Highways have objected to this one because it unacceptably narrows the width of the pavement here because they are wider than the core box, and then the width between the,
Cool.
the hubs are wider than the core box. They're 3 meters high and then they're wider as well. Yeah. So but they're not as deep. So the pavement at the side of it is unacceptably reduced in this location. Highways aren't happy with it.
Right, we've got several indicated now. We have one proposal on the table, so don't make any more proposals yet, please. Unless you second
Yeah,
it.
but
So I've got Mark next.
Yeah, I'm not overly keen on it, but what is the connectivity like in the middle of Shrewsbury? Anyway, I don't go in the middle of Shrewsbury very often, so do we need this service in the middle of Shrewsbury? That is the question.
I can only answer that when I've been in town myself using my own mobile phone. I'm happy with
Right.
but I can get on my phone. But
That's a need.
Is it planning issue?
It's a benefit for.
it's been put forward as a benefit by the applicant, better connectivity, and if there's more connectivity.
Can I just point out that this is wider than the phone box because it's facing at a very narrow pavement there, so take that, and the Highways objected to it, just take that in mind. David?
I think we need to order the microphones off because
Yeah, I think mine's not working because I think.
Oh, sorry, David.
Right, thank you, thanks, Chair. But I'd like to object to the proposal and will vote against the proposal that's currently on the table for 2 reasons. One is my wife uses a scooter, and as far as kind of creating a pavement which is quite narrow and it'll be more difficult for her, particularly when it's busy in town. I think we should, back the Highways objections here. And secondly, from a visual point of view, I mean, St Mary's is a great historic church, one of the principal churches in town. You do not want to be able to see, as you come out of that church, be confronted by a great big advertising warning. I think that would be totally inappropriate, wrong for Shrewsbury, and I think we should reject the proposal.
Thank you. Jeff?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. 2 points. One, if it's a conservation area, is the conservation officer made comments on all these? And are they happy?
No, the conservation officers object to every single one.
Please, right, well, I
there's
agree with that.
full-
The second thing, if we did approve any of these, who's got control of the adverts? We won't have any control over that. Who's got control? That could be something sexist. It could be gambling, cigarettes, alcohol. It could be anything up there that we've got no control over.
I think there's advertising legislation about what can be displayed, but BT would have the control over it.
Yes.
Who-
Right, okay,
who
well,
gets to-
I still would like to object to this.
Right, Vince?
I think we're kind of getting a little bit off track in that reason that we are being recommended, other than some Highways comments, to reject these are because the benefit that they bring is outweighed by the harm that they do. So it does kind of become a planning issue because in nearly all of them, that's one of the principal reasons why we're rejecting them. In this instance, I do agree that it is going to make the footpath difficult to traverse because they are not small. Forget the height because that has a view, but you've also got to look at the footprint of the thing, which is too large, frankly. I don't like these. I don't think they're appropriate. I don't believe, I've never had any troubles with my phone in Shrewsbury. I can only go back to the comment I made at the beginning. I think these are more about garnering revenue from advertising than they are about providing a public service.
Yeah, I mean, the one thought I had is that nobody's mentioned these are flashing things going all the time, which has more of an impact.
They're not actually flashing, they're a digital display, so they're an illuminated sign, which we try and resist in the town centre. So they're static, digitally illuminated, but then every so often they can change to another sign.
Well,
They're not not flashing, they're not flickering, yeah. Just wanted to be clear though, yeah.
Right, we've got one proposal on the table. And is anybody gonna second my proposal? Right, could I have another proposal, please? Ted was first, I think.
Could I, I'm grateful to Vince for allowing me in. I propose that we support the officer's recommendation.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? I think Gary was first there. Okay, all those in favour of the officer's recommendation, be shown. Unanimously accept. Any other votes, any against?
I'll just vote against.
There we go. Tomorrow against. I thought that might be coming. There you go.
Planning applications then, yeah.
Right.
I'm just trying to keep up to date with this, yeah. So this next application is for advert consent for the same hub in the same location we've just determined. And as I referred to, highways have commented that the width of the pavement would be unacceptably reduced at this location, and therefore the recommended refusal for this advert application is the impact on public safety as well as the adverse visual impact.
So,
Oh, sorry, my speaker wasn't on for any of that. But
Could I propose again that we support the officer's recommendation?
thank you, Ted. Do I have a seconder? Joyce?
Second.
I'll make this a vote. All those in favour of the officer's recommendation?
Not the same time, just the same time.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, okay, right, move on to the next one, item 10 is it? We've just done that 11, sorry.
Right.
Castle Street.
yeah,
Castle
this
Street.
application for planning permission is for a hub proposed to be sited in Castle Street outside H&M. It will replace an existing BT phone kiosk that is smaller than a standard call box. You'll see in the photos in a minute. So a 3-metre high hub would almost be twice as high and appear significantly larger than the kiosk that is there at the moment. Officers recommend refusal in accordance with the officer report and the reason given. So the kiosk is behind the red car there with some advertising material on the reverse of it. And the hubs will come up higher than the fascia of the shop to the left. Is there another picture on the slide?
Yeah, that's huge.
So you can see the back of the kiosk there. It's like silvery coloured and it's got people posted things on it, making it quite rightly a bit scruffy, but it's not as big as a normal call box what they have in the application there. Yeah, just thought I'd point that out. Yeah.
Thank you, Joyce. Thank you for choosing. Okay, Joyce.
I just want to say, I think all of these are a nightmare and they're encroaching terribly on what we see in Shrewsbury, and it spoils the whole feel of the area. Thank you.
That proposal, then.
I'll let somebody else do it.
Would that interfere with that traffic light? I mean, I just can't understand why it's going to distract from it.
That'll be the highways issue on the advertising.
Well, I propose we object
What-
anyway.
what's strange?
Whether it does or
Is
it
it
doesn't.
distraction?
Whether it does or it doesn't, I propose we
Yeah.
object to it.
So are you proposing, Jeff?
Second that.
Okay. Mike would speak.
Yeah, again, I just don't have the same problem with it. It's replacing an ugly telephone kiosk, which does nothing to enhance that street. There's a mixture of buildings there, modern, some old, but nothing that strikes me as particularly, worthy. All the other street furniture is quite modern. You've got a modern bus stop shelter, so I just think that we should allow some element of modernity to creep in because of the services that are available from these hubs. Free phone calls, for instance, sometimes people lose their mobile phone, which can be an emergency situation. Sometimes their phone has run out of battery. If someone needs help in the middle of the night and doesn't have their phone on them, and some people still don't have mobile phones. So I think, to have that free phone call facility for some people in some situations, I think could be quite important. And so I think on a street like that, I can't see, because I would imagine they'd position it so that it wouldn't narrow the width of the pavement considerably. It can't be much wider than an existing phone kiosk, and it could go slightly to the road side of the kiosk rather than onto the pedestrian side of the kiosk, and wouldn't narrow the pavement much at all. So I just again would propose that in this instance we shouldn't just have a blanket reaction to these things, we should consider it in context. You know, it's no worse looking to me than that bus stop. So I would propose that we accept and allow permission for this hub.
Thank you, Mike. Let's point out we have a proposal and second on first one, so we'll have to vote on that first.
Yeah, I know. I'm not going to get a seconder anyway, but
I hear what you're saying. Some valid points there, but is everybody happy to go to the vote?
Can I ask a
Question, go on.
Has anybody actually asked the blind people and the disabled people, you know, the people who represent them, what their feelings are on this? Because a number of years ago, we had a scrutiny meeting on this, and honestly, it's really difficult for people navigating along the paths and everything. So I'm just wondering, have we actually consulted with these people?
Jane?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
I really think we should.
Right. Mike, you want to come back again?
well, just on that one point, I mean, there's a low planter there that someone with partial sight might trip over anyway. You know, that part of the pavement isn't particularly usable. So if this hub extended to that side of the existing kiosk, you know, it might even make it safer because it's illuminated. It would be more visible to partially sighted people than the existing kiosk and planter that you know, I mean, any one of us could trip over that because of where it is. Sorry, I just don't think that's a reason for objecting.
This isn't recommended for refusal due to an obstruction of the pavement. This is purely on visual impact that a hub of that scale with that level of illumination is unacceptable in that location. Both the planning officer and the conservation officer consider this. We try our hardest to resist all illuminated signs actually in Shrewsbury Town Centre, and we only ever allow them on premises that are open into the evening, like pubs and restaurants. It would be a large illuminated display permanently on, 3 metres high, and we consider in all of these locations it's not a suitable structure to be sited on the pavements in Shrewsbury. Just want to make that clear. This particular one, there isn't an objection to do with obstructing the pavement.
David?
Yeah, I'll be quick, Chair, thank you. I think the problem with this is it's also, I would like to ask the planning officer, whether it sets a precedent. So whether if we approve any of these, would then an applicant be able to come along and suggest have large hoardings in the middle of Shrewsbury on the basis that we have approved this, one of these? And I do worry, you know, if we have to think about, you know, what precedent this might set, and if we have to preserve the character of Shrewsbury, I think we should definitely refuse it.
Well, it's just the size and precedent. You said you take words from the mouth.
Okay, right. I appreciate what you said, Mike, and some very valid points. I don't think you know much backing, but I understand what you're saying and I hear what you're saying.
Yeah.
Thank you. So on that point, we shall go to the vote. All those in favour of going with the officer's recommendation, please show. And against? Mike against. Okay. Right, moving on.
Right, this next application is the advert consent for the same hub, same location. It doesn't restrict the width of the pavement in this location, so the reason for refusal is just the adverse impact on the visual amenity and character and appearance of the area.
Before we go to the vote, can I just ask a question? As the highways commented on the traffic light, on the impact.
The highways have been consulted and they've commented on each application individually, and they haven't raised. They haven't raised any issue with its proximity.
That's going to be higher than the actual traffic lights.
Yeah, they
Take
haven't
away
actually.
the whole use of traffic area.
It would take your eye away from it.
So that I recommend we do.
I don't think it's higher than the traffic light.
Sorry?
I think it has to be higher than the
No,
traffic
don't
light.
speak.
Chair, move we go with the officer's recommendation.
Thank you.
Second.
Well, right, okay. I
Okay.
think I propose it. I'll take Vince's second. Okay, so all those in favour of the officer's recommendation, please show. Unanimous this time. Thank you. Moving on to the next one.
Right, this next application is back to a planning application, so it's for a planning permission for a hub that will be sited between 2 bus shelters outside Starbucks, close to the square, opposite a row of significant listed buildings. Although it will replace 2 existing call box in this location, it will be higher than the call box and also the bus shelters in this location. Officers recommend refusal in accordance with the officer's report and the reason given.
Thank you.
So
We've got pictures there.
you can see two existing call box and the hub takes more of the width of the pavement. The highways have objected on this one, and same as all the other hubs, it's a metre higher than that existing call box.
Happy to make the officer's recommendation.
Second.
Right. Thank you very much. Should we go to the, right, we shall vote on it. All those in favour of the officer's recommendation, please show. Okay, thank you.
The next application is for advert consent for exactly the same hub in the same location. Highways have commented that the proposal would unacceptably reduce the width of the pavement in this location, and therefore the recommended reason for refusal refers to obstructing the way for pedestrians and impacting on public safety, in addition to the adverse visual impact.
Thank you. I'll propose that we go to the officer's recommendation. Second, the chair. Second, Vince. All those in favour of the officer's recommendation. Thank you. Moving on.
This next application is for planning permission again. It's for a hub to be located outside the entrance on the south side of the market hall in Shopbatch. The hub will replace an existing floor box in this location, but again it will be significantly higher, and although situated adjacent to one of the larger and more modern buildings in Shrewsbury, there are listed buildings opposite, and the hub is considered to be out of scale with its surroundings. Officers recommend refusal in accordance with the officer report and reason given.
Just wait for a photograph.
Yeah.
So there's the two call boxes there, side by side.
Oh, I see.
So they'll be removed. But again, the hub's a metre high there and with illuminated screens on both sides.
You have to get your head around.
And that's it looking.
In this picture, is the signs going to be facing widthways?
Yeah.
Yes.
The two call boxes that will be facing
That's
the
why
wide.
it's
So
wide.
that as you're walking along the pavement, you're going to see the screens. It's not facing you. Yeah, that's why in some places it is restricting the width of the pavement because it's going that way.
Okay, can add recommendation, please. Thanks.
To make the officer's recommendation.
Second, please. Second. Ed, two stone ten. And go for the vote. All those in favour of the officer's recommendation, please show. Unanimous. Thank you very much. You've got to go to this action again. I'm sorry. Thank you, James.
Right, the final application is for advert consent for the same hub in the same location outside Market Hall entrance in Shopbatch. It doesn't restrict the width of the pavement in this location, so the advert application has been recommended for refusal due to the adverse impacts on visual amenity and character and appearance of the area.
Mark,
Yeah, we'll go with the officer's recommendations, please.
thank you very much.
Have a second, Chair.
Thank you, Vince. All those in favour of the offer recommendation, please show. Thank you very much. Sorry about that, everybody, but we have to put this motion, I'm afraid. So now we'll move on to item 17, which will be quite as quick. So, Don Oswestry. We can't announce it on the
Traffic
drive.
carriage.
Traffic
Traffic
carriage.
carriage.
Thank you, Trace. It's okay. Philip, you're presenting this.
Right, I think I'm ready after all that.
Thank you.
Sorry for that.
It's quite a contrast now, we're going to cows.
Do we have to wait for Miranda?
Yes, we do, where's she
Yeah,
gone?
I'm sorry.
Let me get the extension lead. for Phyllis.
Oh, right, yes, it's running low, so yes, we do
Oh,
need
there you
it.
go. We'll just wait until it gets set up.
Okay, right, it's looking much brighter now, Miranda.
Okay,
The sun is shining. Thank you. Ready?
you were ready? Thank you. Philip.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Right, this application is for construction of a new intensive dairy complex, which includes means of access of the adjacent public highway and wider area surface water drainage and landscaping, and is part retrospective on land adjacent to Trevor Cloud Farmstead, located just outside of Trevonan, Oswestry. The application is presented to committee owing to the parish council's comments objecting to the application and the application considered by the Assistant Director and myself in discussion with the Chair and Vice as being complex in nature and thus committee consideration justified. Members will be aware of the site, having carried out a site visit this morning, and this included a tour around the surrounding roads, joining the site and identifying all the dwellings within close proximity to the site and joining the site in this immediate area to where the application is proposed, which is alongside an existing farmstead at Trevorcloud. Members' attention is drawn to the update sheet, which is quite extensive in updates, and I'll just run through it. The first one is extensive, a letter from a member of the public, and under that I've got the officer's comments in the section 2, where it says in reference to the above mentioned, and you'll have noted that this having been published yesterday. Also, I'd like to draw to your attention the environmental statement in support of the application was drawn up by what planners consider two professionals in this field of expertise, having done numerous environmental statements to the council in relationship to other applications that have been accompanied by environmental impact assessments, and this was confirmed by an inspector in an appeal which was submitted in relationship to one of them where they were considered acceptable. Also, specialist reports such as ammonia, drainage, highways, etc., have been done by other specialists. Landscape and visual impact is what I was trying to find. A landscape and visual impact assessment accompanies the environmental statement. They were all drawn up by specialists in their relevant field. Obviously, we've received more letters of objections from members of the public. These are commented on, particularly in relation to highways. You'll see there is officer comments with highways. We don't consider there is any issue with regards access, and officers consider that the application as proposed acceptable without the need for a traffic routing. All public highways which will be used from the entrance to the farm are classified. You'll notice the road it goes on to is a C-class road, and the road past the original entrance a B-class road. There's reference made here to health and safety, potential accidents. I did note during our site visit this morning, we went inside the farm dairy. There was health and safety signage up in there with regards to the potential for accidents. Environment Agency have further commented, raising no objections, and please note what they say regarding manure management and the regulations that cover this. Another letter from Roger Jones on behalf of the local community. This was received yesterday, raising the concerns of the local residents. Members, I'm sure, will have noted this. The next one I wanted to bring to your attention is conditions. Sorry, I'd like to come to that later. That concludes on the update sheet. One thing before I go on to the presentation, which is quite extensive. The applicants have also looked at drainage in the wider area, and there's been extensive discussions with the council's land drainage team, who have been out on site on several occasions, and that has resulted in 2 drainage ponds on the entrance to the farm, which I pointed out to you as we approached along the farm drive to the new farm buildings this morning. They are taking surface water in from the wider area. We do have the council's land drainage manager here today, who's available to clarify anything if need be. Sorry, you can bear with me a minute, please. Right then, I'd now like to make a point regarding paragraph 6.43 of the officer's report, in that it refers to the applicant's ammonia impact assessment. Which will, the applicants have stated what they have in paragraph 6.43 on the ammonia impact assessment. Our ecologist considers this statement incorrect. In combination assessment is required even if the model impacts are below 1% of the relevant critical levels and loads. However, I must make very clear, in this instance, no other plans and projects other than the previous recent planning applications at Cloud Farm have been identified for assessment of cumulative in combination effects. And thus, while we don't agree with that quote, it's not relevant to this application because of consideration to the cumulative and in combination effects. Otherwise, also, as indicated, this application is part retrospective, and members' attention is drawn to paragraph 2.4 of the committee report and the planning history of the site. The site is also currently subject to an enforcement appeal as a result of the council serving an enforcement notice on the applicants and the site, to which the applicants have appealed to the planning inspectorate. And this application is made for the whole of the site as part of this enforcement process. A screening opinion in relation to development site is attached as appendix 2 to the committee report, and members' attention is drawn to paragraphs 2.5 and 6.11 of the committee report, which explains this. I'll now run through the slides. Application site is outlined in red, which indicates existing on site as observed by members on site this morning, as well as a proposed slurry lagoon, which is yet to be constructed here, which we walked around, came down the drive here, we walked from here through the buildings to the cattle holding yard here, and past that to point out where the slurry lagoon is going. We were standing here looking out towards it. The milking parlour here, we walked into that and looked around through that. There was milk silos alongside here, which are retrospective. They're already in place. They haven't got permission. Also, but not in place yet, is it surface water drainage pond here for the buildings, all piped up from the site. And there was 2 farm buildings on site, with one with cows in, and you'll have noticed the underground slurry systems. Now, those 2 buildings have had planning permission previously, along with the milking parlour we're in. However, the 2 farm buildings themselves have got overhangs on them. So therefore they weren't in accordance with the originally approved plans, and also the underground slurry systems. So hence the reason for the application as we have before us. I mentioned to you earlier about drainage, that there's 2 ponds, one in the entrance here and one by a tree here. They cover drainage of the wider area around, and there was problems with water coming onto this highway, etc. So those ponds have been put into place. They are also part of this application. Now I'll run through some photographs of the site. This is during construction, obviously taken earlier in summer. There's the one with the second building. This one here is the one with the cows in. There's the milking parlour, traditional farm buildings here. And that's the second building that was obviously under construction when this photograph was taken. Floor and elevation plans. Side elevation of the one of the cattle sheds. That shows the milking parlour, and which is attached to the cattle collecting yard at the back, which we walked past this morning. This is a proposal for the elevations for the Slurry Lagoon, which I've already pointed out to you. These are the milk silos, which are already in place alongside the milking parlour. This is a drainage plan showing how they're draining the two buildings where the cattle will be in, out towards the Slurry Lagoon. Running ahead of myself. Right, and the application includes slurry manure management and any spreading on the farmland at Trevor Cloud Farm. And more detail on this is outlined in paragraph 6.79 of the committee report. And finally, there is a landscape management plan. A landscaping plan. Clearly, development on site is extensive. It is considered limited to the local landscape. Members will be aware of dwellings outside the control of the applicants and their locations, as well as the dwellings which do form part of the farm holding, as pointed out to you this morning on the road from Tiverton towards Oswestry. And thus, landscape mitigation in the form of tree and hedgerow planting required, and this plan indicates that as set out. Whistle landscaping is considered necessary in order to attract biodiversity, mitigation and enhancement. Officers also accept that the development is agricultural in nature and located in a predominantly agricultural area. And thus Whistle acknowledging built farm on site does have a visual impact. It is also not considered so significantly detrimental as to warrant refusal of the application on this matter, and the conclusions as made by the council's landscape consultant, as noted and set out in paragraph 4.5 of the committee report. These comments are significant material consideration in relation to this application. As indicated earlier, members will be aware of the dwellings that are scattered around the locality and their locations as pointed out during the site visit. Members will note from the response from Shropshire Council's Ecology, as set out in paragraph 4.6, raising no objections. And this includes consideration to external lighting and impacts on ecological aspects, as well as residential amenity. And hence the wording of condition number 6 in Appendix 1 attached to the committee report. As set out in the report, the application is accompanied by an environmental statement, and officers are of the opinion that there is sufficient information within the statement to make a sound judgment on the merits of the application. It is for the housing and milking of 500 Jersey cows. Jersey cows smaller in stature than the more well-known Holstein Friesians, which used to be retained on the holding. While the increase in cow numbers is significant, from approximately 150 to 500, it is considered that this number is acceptable, and it is on this basis that this application has been assessed. And therefore, condition number 3 allows 525 cows in site. This is a slight increase in numbers to allow for bull and illnesses, etc. This number does not include the young stock, which will be on site, as clearly being an active milking herd, calves will be born on site. Members will note none of the statutory consultees to this application have raised any objections, as set out in the report. While Whistle is acknowledged, members of the public, and in particular some near neighbours to the site, have objected to the application, along with the local parish council, it is disappointing to officers that the applicants chose to add development to the site in such a piecemeal fashion, and not really being helpful in assisting significant concerns in relation to this area, in which the application site is located, as there has been surface water drainage issues, However, as prior to construction of drainage ponds located alongside the farm drive, surface water drainage was an issue of concern. However, to the applicant's credit, they have, over an extensive period of time, worked with the council's drainage team in order to provide a betterment. And to date, this appears to be working and should further improve with drainage works yet to be completed. This includes reference to drainage issues along Chain Lane, which we drove down after we left the site this morning, which is located to the north of the application site. The council's drainage team have, without doubt, put a lot of effort and time into the drainage issues which surround the site, which will also give in consideration to drainage issues as a result of the proposed development. And the increase in surface water runoff as a result of the development, as well as consideration to foul drainage, all considered acceptable. It is noted the Environment Agency and the council's land drainage team do not object to the proposal, as indicated in the committee report. As indicated earlier, the council's drainage manager is here if anybody wants confirmation on anything to do with drainage. Another significant cause of contention with members of the public is impacts on public highways. There's no doubt engineering works carried out on site have resulted in significant vehicle movements along nearby public highways. And this has included stone removal from a nearby quarry. However, the application and vehicle movements have been assessed in relation to the operation of the dairy unit on site. The unit will form part of the existing farm. There's no cows on site for many years. It is not a new business venture, but considered modernisation of an existing agriculture unit that was in need of significant upgrading, and hence the construction of the new milking unit alongside the existing, which the existing, of course, includes a farmhouse and thereby accommodation of site for member of staff. The public highways that will be used by farm vehicles are all classified public highways, and as such, the council's highways manager has no objection to the proposal. And this stance is supported by officers, and as such, with the applicants have offered a transport route, this is not considered necessary. As indicated, the roads are classified, and thus farm traffic can use any of the classified highways leading to and from the site. It must also be noted that the previous application for development on site, as referred to in paragraph 2.4, included improvements to the road junction to the west of the site, and these have been carried out and considered acceptable. I also pointed these out to you this morning. Finally, on this matter, the road leading to Marder has been subject to repair by the council. This was not as a result of development on site, but in relation to the wider area and road users. This road has been monitored by Shropshire Council Highways, as well as the Highways Development Manager himself and myself also. And we all do not consider it is any different to any other similar roads serving agricultural and rural communities. As indicated, the application is accompanied by an environmental statement, and it is considered that impacts in relation to noise and potential accidents and mitigation is acceptable. And it is noted the Council's public protection raised no issues of concern on this aspect. It is also worth noting that the application is for development in relation to the existing dairy farm business where cows have been milked for many years. Finally, in conclusion, after careful consideration to all the material considerations, which include the economic benefits to the business concerned, as well as environmental and social impacts, and this includes impacts on the surrounding area and residents, and for the reasons as outlined in the conclusion to the report, the recommendation is one of delegated approval to the Assistant Director, subject to conditions as outlined in Appendix 1. Attached to the report, and any modifications to these conditions as and if considered necessary by the Assistant Director. I'd also like to point out that a map of the farm and area for spreading slurry, as I've shown as part of this presentation, is still subject to environmental impact assessment consultation. However, this plan did not introduce what is considered any further new information, and the application makes clear slurry is to be spread on land at Chevercloud Farm, just like manure generated from the previous herd was. This matter covered in section 6.7 of the report. As such, no approval notice will be issued in relation to this application until the 18th of November. There are a couple of points I wanted to make in relationship to conditions as set out in the Appendix 1. I've got one, condition number 5 on external lighting. I'd like to slightly amend that to start off within the first planting season and to finish it prior to the start of and the first nesting season following publication of this decision notice if members are mindful to support the application. And finally, condition number 11, prior to the slurry lagoon and surface water drainage pond. And the last point I want to make very clear, Natural England were consulted on the application and have not responded to the further reconsultation. However, as made clear by our planning ecology team, they have no objections to this application. Thank you, Mr. Chair. That concludes my rather long-winded presentation on this application.
Thank you very much for that. Well done. Well done. We have 4 speakers on this, 3 against, 1 for. So we'll go into that now. And the first speaker is Cameron Goodman. Would you like to come forward, please? We have 3 minutes. Would you like a warning with 30 seconds?
Yes, let me just open my screen.
Absolutely. You'll only start the clock when you're ready.
Thank you very much.
And there's a, yeah, use the microphone, the button on the right.
Okay, hold on.
We won't start until you're ready. Ready? Okay, thank you.
The LPA recommends approval on a development that does not comply with the Town and Country Planning EIA regulations of 2017 or the procedures of the LPA's own requirements. The development fails to comply with the stated legislation. An application should not be considered in isolation. If it's an integral part of a more substantial development, an EIA must be considered. This was a failing of both the applicant and LPA. In order to ensure the completeness and quality of the document, the applicant must ensure that it's prepared by competent experts, accompanied by a statement outlining the relevant expertise or qualifications of such experts. The ES does not comply. Mitigation measures proposed are designed to limit or remove any significant adverse environmental effects of a development. LPAs will need to consider how the mitigation measures are to be secured. The ES is unlikely to be sufficient unless the ES was exceptionally precise in specifying the mitigation measures to be undertaken. Mitigation measures are not stated for the development, operations and decommission phases, or what measures will be undertaken to minimize or eliminate these impacts. The ES does not comply. The applicant must publish notices in the local press and serve a notice with the required information to those persons who would otherwise be unaware of the ES and who may have an interest in or be affected by the proposed development. And one further copy of the ES offer onward transmission to the LPA to the Secretary of State, not actioned. The terms of the enforcement notice have not been met. The notice should not be enforced, or at the very least, a planning application deferral implemented until all omitted information is made available, agreed and approved in writing by the LPA. The LPA has favoured the developer throughout the process, actively preventing adequate representation by the community affected. This has included withholding information critical to our opportunity to submit full objections. An FOI request submitted on August the 3rd has been met with obfuscation, no response for 3 months, and then releasing information related to a different area which constitutes a significant GDPR breach. We still do not have the information we requested, which should be readily available if the process is open and transparent. We do, though, have copies of emails from LPA employees to the developers, giving them the heads up about concerns being raised by residents in relation to the development, and advising contractors to be very careful of a neighbour to the development, which demonstrates impropriety at the very least. Core strategy policy states that proposals for large-scale new development will be required to demonstrate that there are no unacceptable adverse environmental impacts. It's irrational for the LPA to approve a development which contravenes council, government and environment agencies' policies for the management of our waterways. The incorrect advice and decisions of the land drainage team have resulted in ongoing illegal pollution to our watercourses, straight into the Severn Basin by the applicant, which feed the Severn Basin. Aerobic colony, E. coli, coliforms, Clostridia, Enterococcus, Salmonella, all above the laboratory limits of analysis in an ag lab. You cannot give permission until a full and independent investigation into both the process and the impact of this development have been undertaken. If you do so, you'll be sanctioning impropriety, irrationality, and illegality, the 3 grounds for judicial review. And as a community, we will pursue this along with a class action against the authority, which is employed by us to act on our behalf rather than ultra virus and in the interests of overseas holding companies.
Thank you. Just about got it in. Well
Just.
done. Take a breath now. So can we have the next speaker up, please? Councillor Martin Bennett. Via Teams, it says here, but obviously he's here in person. Good afternoon, Martin. Long time no see. You know the procedure. Would you like a 30-second warning?
I would. I'm also time myself.
Time yourself. Would you like a 30-second warning, sorry?
Sorry?
Would you like a 30-second warning?
Yes.
Okay, no problem.
Am I on?
You're on, yeah.
The Rural Parish Council requests the Planning Committee refuse or defer the application. Reason: the submitted environmental statement does not comply with the requirements of the Town and Country Planning Environmental Impact Assessment Regulations 2017 and fails to conform to National Policy Planning Framework, Shropshire Council Core Strategy CS5 and SANDEV MF7B. Paragraph 185 of the NPPF states, planning policies and decisions should ensure that new development is appropriate for its location, taking into account the likely effects, including cumulative effects of pollution on health, living conditions and the natural environment, as well as the potential sensitivity of the site or the wider impacts that could arise. CS5 states in part, new development will be strictly controlled in accordance with national planning policies protecting the countryside, and proposals for large-scale new development will be required to demonstrate that there are no unacceptable adverse environmental impacts. SAMDEV MF7B, planning applications for agricultural development will be permitted where it can be demonstrated that there will be no unacceptable impacts on environmental quality and existing residential amenity. The environmental statement does not, as required under Part 5 of the regulations, contain any descriptions of the likely significance of the impacts of the proposed development and operations on the environment. Any features of the proposed development or mitigating measures to avoid, prevent or reduce and if possible offset likely significant adverse effects on the development. Legislation requires that to ensure completeness and quality of the environmental statement, the developer must ensure that the statement is prepared by competent experts and must be accompanied by a statement from the developer outlining the relevant expertise or qualifications of such experts. The ES fails in the above points with no indication of the competency. If the ES fails to comply with national legislation and is required as a key part of the planning application, then the application cannot be approved and should be refused or deferred. If, however, the committee is minded to approve the planning application, the council requests the permitted development be limited to the scale of the current application, and that mitigation measures in respect to the environment be conditioned as part of the planning permission and agreed by the Northern Area Planning Committee before permission is given.
Thank you. You have 2 seconds left if you wish to. Thank you. Okay, right, we have our Councillor Joyce Barrett speaking. You have 5 minutes, Joyce.
Thank you. First of all, I'm going to say something, speaking as the local councillor, and then I have been asked to raise some issues with the committee, which I will happily do, if that's okay. Right, the majority of residents of Coedigo and the surrounding area are vehemently against this application. The application has caused real mental anguish and major concerns for property owners in the area and the wider community. The residents feel that this is a planning application that was put in piecemeal in order to circumvent the planning process and possible refusal at an earlier stage. Members will be aware, having read the comments and the arguments put forward by residents and the parish council, of the issues which many residents still feel have not been addressed. For example, flooding, pollution, damage to the environment, and the disruption of the peaceful lives of residents. It is vitally important that, should this application be approved, that, as one of the conditions, the herd is limited to 500 cows and no more. The major concern is that it will become an intensive dairy farm housing thousands of cows, and I know there have been rumours over the years that that is the case, thus creating more disruption to the surrounding area and those living near the complex. I would urge members of the committee to place weight on the arguments put forward for refusal by members of the public and the parish council and consider the community affected by this operation. I'd also like to thank previous speakers for bringing up policy and planning law, which they think strengthens the case against it. Right, so I've been asked to raise the following. In the papers, paragraph 4.8, the surface water parameters, design and layout are acceptable together with the riparian connection to the chain lane watercourse at a discharge rate of 5 litres. Recent works to the existing drainage system has established which is acceptable. The question is, as a matter of detail, this paragraph seems to omit information. What was established by the recent works which is considered acceptable in the context of possible pollution to a watercourse? I now move on to section 4.10, highways. Highways report says, having regard to the application, submission and supporting information, I consider that the traffic movements generated can be accommodated on the local highway network. The question is, in the context of this application, what is meant by local? The highways conditions set out in Appendix 1 requires all traffic to be managed to and from the farm in accordance with the submitted highways assessment, which limits traffic movements to and from the farm using the Oswestry and unclassified road towards Coedigo. Why has there been no consideration or assessment of the impact of an estimated 6,224 vehicles on the Oswestry Road as it approaches the town centre, a notorious bottleneck for traffic on Upper Brook Street? Right, section 6, officer appraisal. Environmental impact assessment, 6.1.1. A screening opinion dated the 11th of February 2022 for a covered holding yard and slurry lagoon was carried out in accordance with EIA regulations 2017 and concluded that the area of the development will exceed the indicative criteria as set out in the EIA regulations Schedule 2/1C and 13B. For determining significance. With reference to the guidance set out in the MPPG and noting the considerations set out in the screening assessment, it was concluded that an EIA was required in support of any formal planning application. Reference was made to cumulative impacts and other developments on site, as referred to in paragraph 2.5 above. The applicants have submitted an environmental statement in support of the application, and this application has been assessed in relation to this statement, detail of which is considered acceptable in relation to the assessment of the proposal. The report acknowledges that an EIA is required as a key part of the determining the application. The ES states it was prepared under the management of Rosina Bloor, BSc Honours MRICS, Environmental Impact Assessment Coordinator and directed, reviewed and approved by Richard Corbett, BSc Honours, MRICS, Roger Carrick and Partners. I'm nearly there. Have the officers checked that these persons are, as specified in legislation, sufficiently qualified to prepare the ES? The report only says that the application has been assessed in relation to the statement. Therefore, on what basis is the ES considered acceptable? The ES was submitted by Roger Parry and Partner LLP, but there seems to be no documentation on the planning portal from the developer outlining the relevant expertise or qualifications of such experts as required by legislation. The ES fails to identify the significant impacts related to the development, operations and decommissioning. I've got one more.
No, they're very much.
Okay, I'm going to stop there.
You're over time, I'm sorry, councillor.
Okay, that's the back of the room.
Thank you very much. You second at the back of the room. Just switch my background, please, Joyce. Right, we have another speaker. Richard Corbett, let's come forward, please. This is for the application. You have 3 minutes. Would you like a 30-second warning?
Oh, lovely, thank you. Good afternoon. I'm a client design agricultural company with 2 hubs run by a local farming family from Langedwin, one in Lincolnshire, the other in Shropshire. The largest family running is a Berwick estate in Shrewsbury. Traffic Light in Trevodden is a well and long-term established dairy farm on the land border estate, which was purchased in 2015. Dairy farming is the biggest sector of UK agriculture, and Shropshire is at its heartland. The customers expect high standards of animal welfare, protection of the environment and progress towards climate change. To meet these requirements, Labour Foundations for a Sustainable Future, you need to invest in a modern setup, which is what our clients are doing. Trevor Clyde has not received any investment in the milking enterprise for a considerable number of years, which has led to the parlour and livestock buildings being outdated to modern farming requirements. Proposals incorporate a state-of-the-art milking parlour, which will allow cows to be effectively milked with a viewing area for local school children and fellow farmers to utilise. The proposed livestock cubicle buildings allows dairy cows to express normal animal behaviour and are designed to provide natural ventilation, and a natural gradient runs throughout the buildings to ensure no manure stands under the animals. Covering the holding yard and providing the slurry lagoon areas will provide the necessary infrastructure and reduce manure and emissions, improving the current situation. You will have seen from your site visit the standards we wish to meet on farm. If we can finish the development, most of the points raised as concerns will be overcome. 35 members of staff are employed on dairy farms in Shropshire, and with many other Shropshire relief and contractor staff being employed. The building contract has been awarded to a local contractor with material sourced locally. Agriculture underpins a rural economy and feeds the nation and provides food security. Lambordi Ariel employ over 75 people in the rural industry. The new dairy will be an industry-leading modern farm using best available techniques. The local economy benefits from job creation, not just barn conversion, solar developments and housing developments that many rural businesses are diversifying into. Our clients acknowledge that the original plans should have been followed on site. This is proven with an unfortunate outcome, as the previous consents had no restrictions on the stock numbers for them, and the permission before you today has a restriction on the numbers. We've worked closely with the planning enforcement team and the planning department to provide a robust, workable solution on the site, with extensive mitigation and costs incurred by our clients. In support of the application, Yariel have employed professional consultants to prepare the environmental impact assessment and accompanying reports. These consultants have had applications approved by yourself for more substantial EIA developments within the last few months at this committee. Key considerations being assessed by the appropriate professionals as part of the consultation exercise include ammonia impact on human and ecological receptors, odour, noise, dust, spreading of manure to land, surface, roof water runoff, ecological impacts, landscape and visual impact. And we note that the officer's recommendation is for one of approval, and we feel that all of these necessary consultations have had their opportunity to look at the mitigation and everything that we've proposed, and they've come to the conclusion they have no objection to this, and we hope that you're able to support your officer's recommendation for approval. Thank you very much.
Just knock off the.
Yeah, of course.
So was that all?
Yeah.
That's it. That's it. Thank you very much. Right, Philip, would you like to make any comments?
Quite a lot to take in, although some be quite repetitive. Yes, first of all, we have the first question raised by the local member was to do with drainage on Chain Lane. If you'd be so kind, I'd like the drainage manager to comment on that after I finish speaking now. Would that be okay?
Yeah.
Thank you. The second query she raised was regarding highway traffic movements in the context of the development. This has been assessed based on the information submitted in support of the application, and it is not considered necessary to include a traffic management plan so the traffic goes one way. In fact, in my experience, these are difficult to enforce. The roads are either considered suitable or they're not. To enforce a traffic management plan, as suggested, would need to be worked out with the local parish council. We, as a planning authority, have not got the resources to put in place a one-way system if that was considered necessary. In this case, it is not. It's a C-class road that's going down to Mordor and a B-class road to Oswestry. Both, I acknowledge, have got issues when you arrive in Oswestry on the B-class road with the traffic along Trevelyan Road, and the other one as you go into Mordor. I've travelled the Mordor Road myself on numerous occasions as a result of numerous complaints from members of the public. And not once have I considered they have an issue worth investigating any further. I've done numerous applications in previous employment where, in my opinion, country roads are in a far better state than the ones in Shropshire. I could certainly tell when I got back home in Hereford, from Hereford to Hereford, my car needed a wash. Second thing raised is environmental impact and screening. I want to make it clear, this is not intensive agriculture as far as environmental impact is concerned. Environmental impact assessments, Schedule 1, is in relation to intensive agriculture development such as pigs and poultry. This one is Schedule 2. The officers have screened it as a requirement. However, I must make clear, scale, floor area alone is not a reason to require a Schedule 2 development. In fact, it was very balanced whether to require an environment statement on this or not, as there are no designated landscapes within the site is situated in or of ecological interest. Secondly, thirdly, it was brought to my attention, about the ability of the officers who conducted the environmental statement. This is carried out by what officers consider competent people and who have put the statement together, along with specialist reports such as on noise, odour, landscape and visual impact assessment. These are all set out on the council's website. Finally, the application has been advertised in accordance with environmental impact assessment regulations, and as I've pointed out today, not one of the statutory consultees have objected to this application. Now, if this application wasn't considered acceptable with its environmental statement content, why have not any of these statutory consultees raised this as an issue? Clearly, they have not. I'd now like to defer to my drainage colleague to comment on the surface water parameters on Chain Lane. Thank you.
I'd like to come forward and just use the mic, please.
Okay.
My name is John Bellis. I'm the Drainage and Flood Risk Manager for Shropshire Council, for those who have not met me. If we get the drainage plan just up on the screen, that might just be the easiest to talk about. Well, no, the wider site plan, sorry.
Tell me where you go.
It might go the wrong way, I think. Keep going the other way.
Or back to where I come from?
Yeah, apologies, I must have missed it.
You must have, yeah.
That'll do, yeah.
That's the landscape.
Okay. So I think with this side, there are two separate almost surface water catchment. There's the one heading towards north, towards Chain Lane, and then there's the southern catchment going towards the village of Cody Go. At the top on Chain Lane, land drainage team had worked with the landowner to request the maintenance of an existing ditch course that ran down Chain Lane. That has now been undertaken by the owner of the site. That's an existing ditch course which drains not only the field but also the public highway. So in terms of a connection to that ditch course, because that ditch is partly in the ownership of the applicant, they actually have a right to connect to that ditch. So unfortunately, irrespective of whether anybody thinks that's an appropriate location, I do think it is an appropriate location because it is on the boundary, it does receive water from the site already, they have a right to connect in that location. I think it's worth noting that there is an existing pollution issue with that ditch, and I do have a site visit with Mr. Cameron Goodman, who was one of the previous speakers, booked in for next week to go and review that and the connectivity of that ditch course further downstream. But as I've stated, as that forms part of their ownership and part of their responsibility under riparian law, they do have a right to connect to that system. With the southern end, we are aware of flooding in the village of Cody Go. That location has been subject to an investigation by Shropshire Council, so the village is slightly to the east of the site. We're aware that the applicant did undertake modification to an existing ditch course along the track there, and my land drainage team did raise that as an issue because obviously it is part of the drainage system that drains towards the village. The applicant has since undertaken remedial works and installed two ponds there on that entranceway. Although those ponds may not provide massive amounts of additional attenuation, it will provide a minor benefit to Cody Go. There is also the intention that Shropshire Council are exploring additional works further downstream as a capital scheme to the highway network to try and further alleviate the flooding in the village itself. The drainage design has been assessed internally. There is a separation between the foul water produced by the yard and with the internal of the buildings, which will go to the Slough Lagoon, with all surface water produced by the roof area going to the attenuation basin to be attenuated and discharged at greenfield rates. So whilst it's appreciated it's a contentious site locally, there is nothing there that myself or my offices deem out of the ordinary, and we would be minded to support the application.
Thank you very much. You finished?
Yes, I'd like to hear
Moment, yeah.
for the, what the members' debate is first.
Okay, come on to the floor. Vince?
Just look round to see if anybody else wanted to go first. Obviously, this is a very complex one. We've heard a number of complaints, for want of a better word, from people who live locally. We've had somebody who says that they speak for the local community. I have to say that I live probably on the hill overlooking this as the crow flies, probably about half to 3/4 of a mile away. I consider myself therefore to be part of the local community, and nobody's ever asked me what my opinion is, not that I would have shared it as a member of this committee. It is a difficult one. I think this has been a protracted and ongoing thorn for some people. I think there has been a bit of a piecemeal approach to it, which perhaps where we are now hasn't served it reputationally as well as it might have done. I think that a lot of the issues that some local people have are based around particularly stone trucks early on thundering in from the quarry that is part of the estate, the holding, to put the footings in. I've certainly drive down the road that comes out right in front of it probably half a dozen times a day, and I'd watch with interest diggers and bulldozers driving backwards and forwards and shifting lots and lots of soil around it, doing lots and lots of different things. I can understand why some people may have been irritated. Personally, I'm not one of them. but I'm going to deal with and talk about what I see is the application as it stands before us. As I say, I live up on the hill, which is New Barnes Farm, owned by the Francis family. It's a big dairy farm. At the foot of the hill, we've got Jackson's Farm, which is a big dairy farm. We go down to the Trevonnan Trevonnan to Oswestry Road, and on the other side, there's always been a traditional, frankly, a little bit ramshackle looking dairy herd, which is the old part of this site. We've heard that this is an attempt to modernise what was an existing business, although it had stopped, I think, for maybe a year or two beforehand, into what is a modern dairy for the production of high quality milk rich in butterfat. I understand that the milk is used by Arla in winter, and then by the cheese factory in Oswestry during the summer. I thought I heard a quote this morning saying that the average litre of milk produces about 3 tonnes of CO2 to produce, and actually this unit produces 1 tonne. As we know, we've got COP27 on at the moment, and frankly finding better and more sustainable ways of farming, albeit not everybody's cup of tea. Perhaps everybody would like a cow in their backyard and do it themselves, but life doesn't work like that, unfortunately. I don't particularly have an issue with this application. I have to be honest. I think we have been reassured by our officers that the steps that are required, including the EA advice, have been taken. They've been approved. Highways doesn't have an issue. There are still 1 or 2 issues, which I think our drainage officer has said that he's looking into next week with one of the previous speakers. But those are issues that will be fixed when the lagoon is in. This is a modern dairy farm in North Shropshire, which is dairy farming country. And I'm minded, I think, to support this. I don't see any reason, even if I were against it, I can't see any reasons within the application that I could use that would be justifiable and robust and stand up to an inspector. So I will be supporting this. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Vince. So, Mark?
Yeah, I was brought up on a dairy farm, so I've milked dairy cows for a few years. I've enjoyed dairy cows, and there were never Jersey cows, but I do enjoy seeing Jersey cows around the place. I also like to go most mornings to the local shop and buy a pint of milk. And if I was buying it from this place, I'd be pretty happy. It's a modern farm. It's a good farm. The cows look very happy. It's not an intensive farm. It's a big farm because they're farming over 600 acres. They're not buying lots of mares in from other farms, which a lot of other farms are now doing. I thought after the first speaker spoke that I was thinking about a nuclear plant rather than a dairy farm. It's been a dairy farm for many years. I've visited on many times. I think it's a nice site. It's a modern site, and I think it needs improving.
Thank you, Mark. Jeff, can you switch your mic on?
He was using it.
All right.
Oh,
Yeah.
sorry,
Yeah, tell him to switch it on.
yeah, switch it off.
Right, Gary. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Just a point from the drainage officer, you mentioned the attenuation ponds and the localised flooding in the village on a frequent basis. If this farm wasn't developed, can the drainage officer confirm whether the village would still flood from the rainwater coming out of the sky area into Shropshire?
Can I just pop over to you? Would it still flood without the farm there? Is that, yeah?
Yeah, I mean, the site is being restricted to greenfield rates, so there would be no discernible change.
So the installation of extra farm buildings, extra cows will not increase the flooding in the village or decrease the flooding in the village in any way, shape or form. Thank you.
Thank you. Dave.
Yes, thanks, Chair. Just a couple of issues that I want to like some clarification on from the officers if possible. One is to do with landscaping. It was mentioned, I think, during the course of the presentation. And I just like, and also, given it's quite a prominent position this development. And I'd just like more information about the landscaping, about the vegetation proposed there to make sure that it is definitely is going to screen some of the development here. And the other issue was just in terms of, I noticed that the applicants are appealing the enforcement notice. I just wanted to know how that relates to what we're discussing today.
Enforcement, the enforcement notice. Yeah, that's those.
I've just got more, just, Edward, please.
Question of clarification for one, and well, two things actually. Can you go back a slide to the red and the green slide that's coloured in? Could you explain what the red and the green designate?
It's the manure management plan. The green is where they're spreading manure. And the red is where they're not spreading manure. I'd ask the agent to correct me if I'm wrong on that. I can't see them.
I can't either.
No, I can't. No, I can't. It's even worse on here than it is on there, actually.
Can you see fence?
Yeah, but I can't read it.
We asked the agent.
Red is where they can't.
I'm sure the applicant could, if members will allow, could confirm that. He's sitting in the room here, the agent.
Richie, just confirm.
Yeah, the green areas are the land that's available for spreading. The red is where we designated spreading should not take place. And then I think the white areas where we're proposing that we don't spread. It's not that we don't have to. It's not that we can't. We've proposed that we would.
That is what I suspected, is what it said. Now, the green is where it's been spread.
That helps me. And the second one was, we've talked quite a bit, and the member has, about the level, the increase in herd size to 500 plus. Am I of the understanding that this farm has grown in size in acreage anyway in the recent past?
Yes, I understand it has.
So, right, that answers my question, because obviously then with the spreading of manure and mitigation that way, it's obfuscated. Thank you.
We've got more land spread on.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Criteria. Okay, Philip. David has a question.
Yeah, right, yes, okay, thank you. Yeah, landscaping, prominent, yes, it's acknowledged in the report, it's a prominent position and in need of, so the landscape plan. Right, it's acknowledged in the report to committee that this is a prominent location within the immediate local landscape. However, as also pointed out, our landscape consultant does not object to this application. This is an example of one of the plans submitted for landscaping of the site, and it's, there's a raft of landscaping plans submitted, which, if members are mindful to support, would form part of the approval. And I'd now like to bring your attention to the suggested conditions as attached. There is a plan there, there's a condition there indicating with regards to development.
10 landscaping conditions.
So, condition number 10, with regards a landscaping condition in the first planting season following any granting of planning approval.
Chair, can I just ask Philip if that's the bit that they showed us this morning had already been planted?
Yes.
Sorry, what was that?
You pointed out a section on the landscaping this morning, which they said had already been planted up along the bottom along the road. Down to Chain Lane.
Yes, that was on the Chain Lane side. I'm not prepared to answer that because whether my eyesight is failing me or what, but I missed to see that this morning. We had heavy rain up there. I was looking at the time of the immediate yard. Landscaping, in my opinion, sorry, development on site hasn't been completed yet. You'll have noted the Slurry Lagoon hasn't gone in yet. I would think it feasible to put the Slurry Lagoon in and then commence on the landscaping once that is in place. This is one of about 5 different plans that have been submitted indicating enhanced tree and hedgerow planting. It's certainly considered necessary, and if members are mindful to support the application and members feel suggested conditions need tightening up, they can do to ensure that the landscaping is carried out within the first planting season, which we're currently in now. The second question raised by the member was to do with, where did I have my notes? Yes, planning enforcement. Yes, this application is part of the enforcement procedure. The council served enforcement papers on the applicants due to the unauthorized development taking place on site. As part of that enforcement process, which is normal planning enforcement procedure, the applicants submitted a formal planning application. The planning inspectorate have put the enforcement procedure in abeyance to give the applicants the opportunity to have this application determined for us. They are monitoring the situation, and obviously it won't be indefinitely. However, if the application is approved and the applicants then decide to withdraw their appeal against the council serving of enforcement, well, then that would rectify the situation. But there's nothing unusual in that. Planning procedures do encourage formal planning applications in order to regulate development as on site.
Thank you, Philip. Okay, notes indicating I have nobody proposed anything yet. I've heard mutes of wanted to support it.
I'll propose the application that we go with those regulations. Sure.
Thank you, Gary. I have a second, Chair. Thank you, Vince. Okay, so no more comments or discussion. We can go to the vote, which will be a
Roll call. Roll call.
Vote. Roll call. Right.
Sorry.
We'll have roll call voice on there.
Yeah.
So Miranda will do it. So if you could answer them, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'll read each member's name out. If you could tell me if you're for, against, or abstaining. Councillor Burchett.
For.
Councillor Elner.
For.
Councillor Clark.
For.
Councillor Green.
For.
Councillor Hunt.
For.
Councillor Jones.
For.
Councillor Isherwood.
For.
Councillor Towers.
For.
Councillor Vasmer.
For.
Councillor Wynne.
For.
That's unanimous.
That's unanimous. Thank you very much for your time and work. We'll just let the room clear a bit and let Joyce come back to the table. And then we'll move on to the next application.
Thank you.
Right, we shall move on with item 18. Oakland County Primary School, and John is presenting this. Thank you, John. Welcome to the committee.
Thank you. Yes, this is well, could you slide off? Yeah. This is item 18, site of Oakland County Primary School. Proposal is put in Basin Hill. Proposal is the demolition of existing school buildings, erection of 22 residential dwellings, formation of access roads from Glebe Road, as well as footpaths, cycleways, and public open space. The road, clarify one point at the beginning, the application comes to committee because the site is owned by Shropshire Council. It's not an application by Shropshire Council. It's actually a site owned by Shropshire Council at this moment in time. The site is approximately 1.2 hectares and comprises the former Oakland County Primary School and associated playing fields. The school closed approximately 10 years ago. The site is adjacent to Christchurch and your house, small residential care home, which is just to the, you should move the care slightly up to the left, Phil, just there.
Yes, I'd just like to point out to members that there's been comments received on the additional representations in relation to this application. First one was from the drainage and sort of engineering officer, who recommended 2 additional recommended conditions. This would see condition 14 on in appendix 1 superseded. The drainage officer continues to have no objection. It was just subject to additional information that we received about the Fallon surface water drainage scheme that we received in the last week or so. We've also received comments from the developer themselves, which I'll read out because this is pertinent later in the presentation. Canova are currently offering 2 section 106 affordable houses, which is 0.2 above policy compliance, plus a further 2 affordable homes with Homes England grant funding. The brownfield nature of the site and site constraints make the scheme tight from a viability perspective. Any increase to Canova's offer of £20,000 towards loss of the playing pitch at the former school, which has been out of use for 12 years, would result in a reduction to the number of affordable homes we would be able to offer on the scheme. Canova are therefore unable to increase the proposed £20,000 contribution. So just wanted to touch on that now. I'll come back to that later in the presentation. And we've also had additional comment from members of the public with concerns regarding access. He's mentioned about his being able to have a drop curb installed at his property. The highways team have commented on this application and raised no objection to the access. Do not raise any concerns about parked cars on Glebe roads. Therefore, if any members of the public wish to have drop curbs added to the property, they could do that as a part of the application and be assessed on its own merits. So going back to the application, I say it's 23 residential dwellings. The housing mix will be 2 single bedroom bungalows, 7 semi-detached 2-bedroom dwellings, including 2-bedroom bungalows, 12 semi-detached 3-bedroom dwellings, and 2 4-bedroom dwellings, which are with 1 being detached. Would you go back to the site plan, Phil? Should be towards the beginning. So this is the site plan. So to the top end of the site there, you can see that's Glebe Road. That would be the vehicle access into the site. The public open space is in 2 pockets. One is central, so just to the left, literally there, and then one just across the upside of the road, just there, Phil, there, just there. So that's approximately 1,800 square meters, which will be compliant with our policies. Yeah, MT2. With additional other small open areas within the site, but to correct a error in the report, those would not be included towards the open space. They are not deemed functional or large enough scale, but they are positive in terms of the landscaping. They will be the 2 small areas to the access and a very small area to the very south of the site. So the 2 primary open space pockets are in the middle of the site, which I've just indicated. In terms of the principle in the development, the site is deemed a sustainable location centred within the centre of Basin Hill, which is designated as a community hub. The amount of dwellings proposed as 23 would increase the amount of dwellings within Basin Hill above the recommended guidelines for the settlement. However, as we're going to discuss now, I do not believe the number of additional homes would cause undue stress or strain on the local infrastructure. The core strategy policy CS10 prioritises the reuse and development of brownfield sites and suitable sites, sustainable locations such as Basin Hill for housing development. This is, as a brownfield site that's been now left out for, I think it's more than 10 years, it might be up to 12 years now, subject to say dereliction and vandalism. The site is within walking distance of local services. There's a bus stops on either side of the development within a 1 to 3 minute walk. Basin Hill Library is approximately 2 minutes from the site. There are the area is also within the catchment area for the Meal Brace Retail Park. It is considered the proposal constitutes a highly sustainable form of development and would constitute a redevelopment of a brownfield site, which is supported by CS10 as well as the section 11 of the NPPF. Other elements of the application include two affordable houses, which would be above the required provision for the site by 0.2. There would also be a further two affordable two-bed homes on plots 4 and 9. Bungalows such as these that would be funded by Homes England. The additional two homes will push the overall provision further above the requirements of 1.8. However, it should be noted that those two homes, as they are funded by Homes England, could not be secured by a Section 106 agreement. A little bit of background on the history of the site. A proposal was granted by committee in 2019. Which would have if you go back to the site plan, please, Phil.
Site plan.
Yeah, it should be the first slide. That's actually better. That was the 47 dwellings that incorporated the site that we're looking at today, which is the school and the playing field, and also the site to the south, which is known as the Glebe Fields and the church area. That was permitted for 47 dwellings plus a community hub, which will be effectively replacement of the existing local library. That hasn't been implemented and that's been withdrawn subject because of a failure to agree on a Section 106. Further background is this whole entire site, including the application site plus the southern element, is within the draft local plan, and that again that is allocated for housing plus a community hub. Today we're only looking at the northern element of the site. Is my consideration that the development would not in any way undermine bring forward any development to the southern end of the site, and which could potentially bring forward a community hub, which I know the parish council indicated would be very supportive of. If you go back to the site plan, Philip. If you look at the southern end of the site plan, you see the access. There is the potential there for the access continuing into the southern area there, into the Glebe Fields. But the site today is purely full of the 23 dwellings and the access and public open space. And also, obviously, the local plan is emerging at the moment, and could only be granted limited weight. So, I touch on the principle, and touch on the recent site history, and we go through the design of the dwellings and the overall landscape impacts. So, if you go down to next slide, Philip. This is street scenes of the developments. The bottom image would be, you can see I am part of the open space there. So it's my consideration that the use of the gables, porches, bay windows and varying roof lines would break up the bulk of the development, subject to conditions including submission of materials details prior to works above damp course level. The dwellings will be of an acceptable design in accordance with the relevant design policies within the SAMDEV and the core strategy. The site would be have open frontages. Parking would be where possible to the side of dwellings. Parking would be in line with the requirements of our highways team. I would therefore be confident that we would now have a development that would be dominated by the parked car. In terms of other matters to do with the landscape and the overall visual appearance of the site, I should draw attention to paragraphs 620 and 621 of the report. We go back to the site plan again. Sorry, Bob. Yeah, to the east as you look there to the right side, Phil. Go further to the right. To the right.
Yeah. You want to see these trees, do you?
Yes, the trees there.
I get the mouse in there.
Yes, during the application, well, there's 35 trees on site. 5 are TPO trees. As part of the development, part of the revised plans that we received, 1 TPO tree will be removed, which is to the rear of plots 14 and 15, which is to the, as I say, if you drop a bit further.
Have you got photographs of these trees?
I have, Phil. Yeah, actually, if you want to,
should we go?
that's the last slide. If you want to go to the last slide.
I've seen it before, if that helps.
last, no, one more.
No, that's the.
So yeah, the large tree there is the TPO Sycamore T28. And be classified as a category C tree. Though it is regrettable that it will be lost. During the application, it was considered that if that was not removed, there will be considerable severe shading impacts onto the plots, to the bungalow plots. So the tree officer and myself have negotiated a compromise solution, which would be that tree would be removed. It is, say, it's a category C tree, and the open space category, open space B area within the site on the site plan will be replanted as part of a full planting landscaping scheme. That open space is at the moment predominated by ash, which, if you want ash dieback, we could therefore have a situation in the future where that open space will have very limited tree coverage. Therefore, it was considered, in terms of weighing the loss of this tree, if we had a robust landscaping scheme, we would actually have a visual betterment, and we would also remove the issues with those two plots in terms of the excessive shading. So yeah, just want to draw attention to that fact that we would be losing one TPO tree there. Yeah, so if you go back to a few more photographs, fella. So yeah, this is the public footpath that runs to the south of the site. This connects the Glebe Road to Lith Hill Road, which is this River Clouds. In between that will be the Glebe Fields, which is owned by the Archdiocese, so it's actually a form of public open space. So in terms of this is view from Glebe Roads. This is the existing entrance to the existing frontage of the school, and this is where the access to the vehicle access to the development will be located. On the opposite side of the road is a collection of semi-detached 1960s, 70s residential dwellings. In terms of residential amenity, it's considered that there will be no undue overbearing, overlooking, overshadowing of properties. A condition will be added. Condition 7 will be added to ensure an overlooking for plot 11. The first floor windows of plot 11 would only serve bathrooms, and these would be conditioned to be upscale glazed. The separation distance there between plot 11 and number 64 Lith Hill is less than 20 metres, so that condition will be imposed. Can you scroll up again, Philip? Any more photographs there?
No, I think that was the end.
Again?
Can you go back to the way?
Yeah, go back to the other side. Yeah. Yeah. So this is obviously the school in its current state. It is derelict. It's not particularly well secured now. As I say, it is a brownfield site, and its development in principle is something that we would certainly support. In terms of highways access, we've received no objections from highways. It is a sustainable site. There's opportunities for walking, cycling, use of public transport. There's connectivity either side of the site with the public footpaths that I've discussed. The access, we believe the visibility space will be acceptable. Parking could be accommodated within each plot. Conditions have been suggested, and these will be imposed as can be seen in Appendix 1. With regards to ecology, this is an important point to note. The preliminary ecological appraisal noted that there were 4 trees with high uprooting potential. There was no objection received by the ecologists, subject to conditions. As the application has progressed, and we're now going to lose T28, the sycamore protected tree, this is one of the trees that is deemed a tree with high backroosting potential. The developer therefore needs to undertake further surveys. This can be done by endoscoping, which can deem whether the bats using that tree at the moment. If there are no bats found, hopefully that can be done quite shortly. If no bats found, then the ecologist wouldn't raise no objection. If bats are found, we would have to have additional BAT emergency surveys, which can only be done in BAT survey season, so that would significantly delay the application. That should be a matter of consideration for the committee. So at the moment, that is a tree with high bat potential, but we can't compare whether or not the bats are currently using that tree. There are no other protected or notable species recorded for priority habitat. A final point before coming to the conclusion. Yeah, that one section that I've got, yeah. So going back to the additional representation that we received, the developers have stated that they would be willing to pay £20,000 towards the loss of the football fields that was previously served the school. The Sports England have recommended instead a contribution of £75,000. Going back to the previous application 2019, Sports England then also recommended £75,000, and this applicant came to committee and it was deemed that no contribution was required. This was considered because of the fact that the site has been out of operation for a long period of time. It's completely overgrown at the moment in time. We also didn't have our public open space strategy published at that moment in time, so it was unclear whether there's a surplus or not. That strategy has been published since then. Sports England believe that there's no reason why, because it's been disused for approximately 12 years, that should not be classed as an open field, and therefore any loss should be compensated for. The developer have accepted the principle of the payments, and they have stated £20,000. They have suggested, as not to repeat myself, in terms of the additional representation, they've mentioned the fact that there's issues of viability. They have reiterated the fact that it has been out of operation for 12 years, and therefore they would like to pay no more than £20,000. They mentioned the fact that it's a brownfield site and the margin for profitability on this site would be lower in their view. We have not received a formal viability statement at this moment, so I said I'd put that to the committee to be aware of that fact. If this application was approved, it will be subject to Section 106 agreement to secure the two affordable houses. I said the other two affordable houses will be by Homes England, which cannot be form part of Section 106. We would also have the public open space maintained in perpetuity. That will be either by a management company or council's own Star Housing, with a fee levied on the residents of the development. And then we would have also a contribution towards local pitch improvements. Both sides, both Sports England, our own leisure officer, and Canovi, the developer, agree that we are not looking at a full replacement pitch here, but we would be looking for funds towards improvement of local pitches in the local area. So in terms of summing up the developments, forest development will be considered acceptable in principle, or constitute a sustainable form of development and enable the reuse of a brownfield site. The development will bolster the local housing stock, generate a over provision of much needed affordable housing for the village, and create accessible public open space for residents. The layout is well designed with open frontages and parking that will be well integrated and not predominant, while the design of the dwellings provides visual interest. Most existing trees will be retained and submitted landscaping plans indicate significant additional planting throughout. However, such landscaping will be conditioned to ensure a high quality scheme is secured and retained. I would draw members' attention to layer condition 6, which is the pre-commencement condition to do with the landscaping scheme and tree and hedge planting. The development will be acceptable in terms of impact on residential community, highway safety, drainage and sustainability. Open space provision will be part of compliance. Subject to no BAF being found as part of the end-scoping survey, proposal would not result in harm or loss of habitat to any protected species. And with adequate landscaping and mitigation measures to be scored by conditions, the proposal would deliver biodiversity in the uplands in accordance with NPPF and SCS 17. The application is therefore recommended for delegated sub-approval subject to the agreement of Section 106 between the developer and Shropshire Council to secure public open space, affordable housing and payment to local pitch improvements and the conditions are set out in Appendix 1 attached to this report, and any amendments to these conditions as considered necessary by the Assistant Director. So, it's an open up condition discussion for members.
Thank you, John. Thank you. Thank you. Who's just going to sort of summarise a bit?
No, I think, no, I will actually now say that. What I see the issue here is, during late discussions on this application, there was an issue with overshadowing of houses with a tree. So they agreed for that tree to be removed, which is subject to a TPO. Members concede it's not a mature, what I consider a mature tree. However, there is potential there for bats. For bats. No, they're not flying newts, they're bats. And you've heard the case officer point out that Sport England have offered a contribution of 20,000 towards mitigation to surrounding areas.
Sport England or?
Sport England. And so the developer at Sport England request, they've offered 20,000, where Sport England asked for 75,000.
Yes. For a pitch that's not being used for 12 years.
However, you also heard from the case officer, the previous application, we agreed not to make any to have any contribution. Now the situation is here, we can't grant planning approval at the moment until it's been established with regards to Great Crest, regards to bats. However, there's a section 106 needs drawing up to cover issues on affordable housing, open space, and if members think it acceptable, the contribution of 20,000 from the applicants in consideration of Sport England's concerns. So therefore, if we're going to draw up a section 106, by the time that's drawn up and everything, although we're not in the season for bat survey at the present, we'll be in it early March, is it, John?
May.
Not on next May, next May.
That's up to farmers. Yeah.
So by the time we'd have to wait until then, if it was found that these trees were part of a flight path for bats. Thank you. That was a bit more longer than 19.
Oh, thank you. Jeff's indicating he wants to floor now. Sorry, local member has to speak first. Thank you, said. You have 5 minutes if you wish.
Make it snappy.
Recommend approval. We'll go to that.
I'm also very close to Vince Hunton. He's got his hand on his knee. I don't think he fancies me. He just wants to get home quick. Yes, I'll only be brief. I do support the application. The school, as has been said, has been unused for at least 12 years. And not only subject to a lot of vandalism on occasion, but at Basenhill are at an adventurous lot. A lot of abseilers have been using it, called falling in through the roof on occasion and causing chaos. The site was always earmarked for housing development, as the officer, as I think indicated, and it included originally a small community hub, which was partly determined to replace our somewhat dilapidated local village library. Over the years, the adjacent church field, which you saw on the plan, the diocese decided to become involved, and it became a much bigger development with best part of 50 houses, I think it was at the time. Sadly, that after 7 or 8 years of to and fro, and that finally didn't take place, and we're now, thank goodness, back to the original application, the original plans, which were for just developing the school site, but sadly, very sadly, without the provision of a small community hub, which was previously decided. The residents generally, and I think the vast majority of them, are now quite relieved, really, to know that the very dilapidated school building is finally going to be demolished. I support the application and particularly welcome the inclusion, although only minor, but the inclusion of some bungalows on the site, which is not particularly common in the present day with developers generally. The population in Basin Hill are increasingly elderly, but they hang on for grim death, and bungalows would be a very popular downscaling arrangement that residents are often contacting me about. The opportunity to downgrade into a single-story family home and free that up for new people to come and actually live in. I much hope that the monies from this development, some monies from this development, can be used to refurbish and future fit as best we can the existing school, the existing library, which is a matter of about quarter of an hour, well, 5 minutes down the road, and is very popular indeed. I think that is it effectively, that the existing library that is there lends itself to conversion into a community hub, because it also has attached to it at the back quite a large garage that was previously used for mobile service for the area, for mobile vans. So if I'm desperate really to see the library actually refurbished and brought up to a modern standard, and hopefully some complementary building, so complementary unity space built on the back of it within the garage area for me. I won't keep you much longer because Vince is really squeezing me now. I don't really see, I know the loss of the school field, I don't really see as a big issue, to be honest. I don't wish to speak against the people that have opposed that. But there is, if you look at the plan again, there is a playing field right next door to the site there, and potentially that could be developed at some stage. It's actually in the local plan and was going to be part of the original 50 houses development. There was going to be a joint venture with the church, but the Basin Hill Parish have well developed and
have to stop you.
smashing and playing facilities at the top of the village, 6 pitches, including pavilions and a variety of different stuff. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ted.
My apologies for hanging on.
I'll open the floor. Jeff indicated accepting.
Is it?
No. I've almost forgotten what I was going to say, Mr. Chairman. I was going to say, I support this application. I think it's good use of a redundant site. It's good use of a redundant site. It does offer off-street parking. It's good layout. It offers affordable housing, which is much needed. But I just want to ask one question. As it's got off-street parking, are we looking into such things as EV parking, EV charging points and things like that? Because I think that would be very important, very useful, something we should always do from now on. So if it ticks all those boxes for me, I support it, and I would like to do whatever we can do to get this passed. Thank you.
Right, so we'll move on to the next one. Jeff, David.
Right. Thanks, Chair. Just a couple of points really. I noticed on the plan, there's obviously the officer mentioned it about the path going through to Little Road, I think, isn't it? From that's it, yeah. And that links up through the estate, I think, looking at the plan. And that, looking at that, presumably it's going to be wide enough. Is that going to be wide enough for cyclists and pedestrians all the way through?
Yes.
Given given the LTM 120, whether there should be a separation of cyclists and pedestrians.
I mentioned the highway team, whether they want to have an additional condition to secure that, but it is certainly wide enough for the moment to allow pedestrians and cyclists to pass. In terms of safety, maybe we need to look in terms of an additional condition to secure for added additional security for pedestrians.
Yeah.
So I'm happy to go back to highways team and ask for that.
Yeah, because in terms of LTM 120, that's what,
Yeah.
what one would expect. The other thing I just wanted to raise, I mean, I noticed on 6.37 where they discussed the issue regarding the compensation to loss of sports grounds and I think both the Sport England and our own council's leisure officer have recommended
Yes.
the sum of 75,000.
Yes.
So, is it possible for us to make that recommendation within this, if we accept this and say that, there should be a contribution of 75,000 as opposed to 20,000, which the Canopy offered, I think.
Right, we'll take some more first now, indicated next. So we just wanted my back up, whatever.
I was going to actually ask this very same question. And then in fact, I found it slightly surprising that after building 23 houses,
Yes.
that £55,000 is going to tip this whole project into non-viability. It just seems somewhat extraordinary. Yeah, I'm just backing up that point. I think we should look into the issue of recompensing properly to the level that Sport England has set.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, I'm going to totally disagree with that. I think it's ridiculous that Sport England, after 12 years of a site in left, overgrown, unused, unloved by anybody, have the cheek to come along and ask for payment for something they've made no effort whatsoever to keep in use. And I want to recommend that we take it down to zero, Mr. Chairman, and we don't pay them a penny. If they were that bothered about it, they should have come along and looked after it and got the kids playing on it, instead of which they've left it for 12 years as a derelict site, unusable by anybody. So I'm afraid I totally disagree with the council to the right. And I think the figure should be zero.
We've got a couple more yet.
Well, I'm surprised to find myself speaking very strongly against Gary there. I agree totally with what's been said here. That was my thoughts. That this land, as I understand it, is Shropshire Council land.
Yeah.
And Cornovia at arm's length developer for Shropshire Council. Well, I know we're trying to fill a black hole in the Shropshire Council finances, but I would have thought with this number of houses, it would be a good way to find some money to actually develop sport in the area, and 75,000 is not out of the question, or something in between 20 and 75, but certainly not 20.
Thank you. Vince.
Thanks, Chair. I will have to, first of all, run after this item. I've got to get home. I've got a parish council tonight. Jenny, as you know, my wife had a pneumonia last week, so I just need to make sure she's all right and give her something to eat before I go. Anyway, back to this. I think first of all, there was a question about EV points. My understanding from other developments that Cornovia have done is that they do apply, not quite passive house standard, but almost very close to it with solar panels and EV charging points on the houses. And as was said during the presentation, houses where possible, which I assume is nearly all of them, have got off-street parking to the sides of the houses. So I'm not quite so concerned about with the issue with Cornovia. It's not, as been stated, it's not an arm's length management company. That's what Star is. We employ them to run our council housing stock. This is a technical company that has one shareholder. That shareholder is this council, and they borrow money from the council to do these developments. And our section 156 officer and us as a council have a requirement for them to show a percentage return on the investment, which I guess covers interest and so on and so forth. So I don't know the detailed whether they could afford 75 or 20,000. I do know that they operate within the best interests of both the environment, of house quality build, and of the shareholder that essentially owns them as an independent company. We are the shareholder. So if they've set it at 20 grand, it's probably because you might be able to squeeze another 5 or 6 grand, but I don't think we could squeeze them 75. I would also not agree with having nothing, because that money actually gets spent on usually other schools and things like that to improve their facilities to make up for the loss of facility, and it's just one of those things that's there. So and to be honest with you, it's part of the application anyway, so I'm not sure we could reduce it to nothing without fundamentally changing the application, having to get them to take it away and then resubmit it. I'm not quite so fussed about the the footpath. It's rural in nature, which is a wonderful thing when you live in the middle of a built-up area. I think 20,000 is enough. There are no bats in the sycamore tree at the moment. They've all flown away, and apparently they're not coming back till May. So, it's to me, if that tree was replaced with some other habitat, then it wouldn't worry me. I don't necessarily see that one low value sycamore tree as being something that would sway me on this. There are plenty of other trees about. I would like to see if there's any great crested newts in it. So I don't particularly have an issue with this, to be perfectly honest with you. I guess there's a long-winded, because everyone's been long-winded on this. I don't have an issue with this, and I will be supporting the officer's recommendation, but I will still need to be away by 5.
Right. I support it. Vince's point that sycamore trees are known as the weed trees in the tree society. They're not nice trees really. They're not something you want to tell people you've planted, to be honest. That's just grown up out of nowhere.
Yeah.
So I've got a lot of truck with that. As we know, and Philip's always telling me, Canova, you're a quality house builder. It looks a nice site, and I think we need support in it, and I think we need to go home.
I'm just going to say, we've got the food thing, we've got the money situation. Legally, what can we do?
That is what I said. That's exactly what I want to touch on. I'm going to ask John to answer on the bats. But you've got to remember, bats are a protected species.
But they're not there.
If it's established, John's going to comment on that now. If they're not there and it's established they're not there, we're going to progress ahead. But what I'm trying to say is, we can, because of this late issue, we're not unable to progress this application until the next survey season. But John will comment on, if there are no bats, what the situation is.
So we've got to wait for the bats to come back before we see if they're there.
Hang on, we'll just get Johnson.
Yeah, they're going to be undertaking a survey, an endoscoping survey within the next few weeks, hopefully, to establish whether there are bats there or not. We don't know if there's bats there or not at the moment. The tree has a potential for bats, a high roost potential. So there could be, there may not be. If there aren't any, then we can proceed. If there are, we would have to have additional agent surveys, because the protected species, we could not condition that.
And that's a dilemma we're in.
Can I just make it clear, Chair? I'm not anti-bats. I'm not, into. But I thought during the statement it was said that the bats are not there at the moment, and they may come back in the spring, which is when we need to see if they're there or not. So
No,
if they're not there at the moment, then.
So the bats aren't there now, we can proceed.
Well, that has to be checked, and that's what
That can be checked.
Yeah,
now.
that's going to do very shortly. Yeah.
Okay, that's fine. Leave it at that. Bats done, sorted. Got to sort out the money situation now. We can't change it. It's on the table. What we've got is £20,000. Yeah, there's a condition. We can't change it here and now, can we?
No, it's not a condition, because you can't condition payments of money. It would go into well, it would have to be a memorandum of understanding for 106 at the moment, because Cornavy don't own the land, we do, and we can't have a 106 agreement with ourselves as it currently stands. So, but we'll get around that. But what I would say to you members is you need to be clear what your actual resolution is here, because at the moment you've got what you've heard from Sport England and also the council's own leisure about the figure that would be needed to compensate for this pitch. It isn't Sport England who have left it alone, it's Shropshire Council who've locked the site up. And Sport England are a statutory consultee when there are pitches, and therefore they are entitled to say and are supposed to protect them. But what you need to consider is, at the moment, the recommendation actually says a signing of a 106 agreement for a pitch improvement payment. So really, what's your resolution going to be, members? Because you've got the recommendation from those consultees, you've also got the applicant saying they can only afford a certain figure. And so some guidance is really needed, I would suggest to members, for the negotiations for this Section 106 agreement, if you're going to go with the recommendation. And I would suggest, really, the planning officers should advise you what their recommendation is to you in that regard, because otherwise we don't know what we're negotiating.
Can we just see what the planning officer's recommendation is, please, on this issue?
Yeah, Sportinglands have indicated that they would be willing to accept a figure lower than 75,000. My view is that as Canovi, the developer, and I've accepted the principle of the payment, and they have not disagreed with the core of Sportingland's comments. I believe a figure higher than 20,000 should be provided. However, if they wish to argue the fact case that they can't provide that, we would need a viability assessment to indicate why they could not provide more money. If at that point they can't, we have a clear viability assessment saying that they cannot pay more than £20,000, we would have to make a decision on a merit application at that point.
The recommendation, okay, what I'm going to suggest the recommendation is that, and Miranda will correct me, I'm sure if I'm wrong, that the signing of the delegated approval to officers for the signing of a memorandum of understanding on the issues I highlighted earlier in relation to affordable housing provision, open space provision, and on-site, provision towards, as requested by Sporting for the 20,000. In the meantime, while that's being prepared, the BAT survey will be established whether we need one or not. If one's not needed, then there's no reason why we couldn't issue a decision notice once the memorandum of understanding is signed. But what you need to decide now is 20,000 sufficient, or is it not? If it's not sufficient, I have to point out they have not done a viability assessment to explain why they can't pay more. But I understand the previous application, which I was sitting alongside me actually, you now, Jane, did not request any.
It wasn't my application. Previous one was too.
Oh. It's turned
It
out.
was put in my name.
It was
wasn't my
it was in your name, but somebody else's record. Well, never mind, whoever's name it was in, there was no contribution paid.
Okay, I've got three. Edward indicated first.
Well, I think, generally, we just need to increase that amount of money because it's actually Shropshire helping other local sports facilities, and we should be able to afford that, having done a housing development. And I think something towards 75, so it's 20 now, it needs to go upwards. And I would say 50.
Thank you. Yeah, I was just going to suggest something similar, that we meet them somewhere in the middle, try and negotiate them up to say £40,000.
David.
Yeah, could I suggest that we propose that it should be £75,000, subject to the outcome of the environment study. I think the officer was talking about. So that gives us a basis for negotiation. Really, that's what I would suggest.
No, well, the room is split on this.
Yeah, I can see.
Looking.
Yeah, I can see the. Yeah, I can see the room split. I've got a recommendation.
That's a recommendation.
I suggest the application is deferred for further negotiation.
I'll propose that we defer for further information to come forward. I think it needs to have a discussion with one over.
We have a proposal for a deferral. I have a second for a deferral.
Yeah.
Oh, no, I put one.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
All those in favour of deferral? Yeah.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I have 8, Chair.
This application deferred because it gives us more time for bats and more time to get some money to street.
Yeah.
Can I just, Mr. Chairman, if I may, can I ask the deferral that the viability survey by Canovi is produced on the financial viability of the project?
That's important.
Because at the end of the day, the decision we make.
Have to do that if we want to.
Right.
We haven't finished. We've got 2 more applications.
Mr. Chair, with your permission.
Yes, you may go now, Vince. Mark, can you take over because they're both in my actually afraid. I'm not speaking on it. I'm fine with them. Just oh. Yeah. I'll sit over here anyway, Mark.
You can sign there, John.
Vice Chairman is Mark Jones, taking the chair. We're all still online. We're not asleep. So item 19 is the roundabout junction at A53 Shrewsbury Market Drayton. Number 22 stroke 03790. Who's presenting this? Mr. Philip Molyneux.
Right, thank you.
Jane.
Right, thank you, Mr. Chair. The application is to erect and display 3 sponsorship signs placed in the A53 Shrewsbury Road roundabout. There are no updates to this application. Application is presented to committee as it involves council land and the application is not in accordance with statutory council statutory functions. I'll now run through the slides. Right, and that one indicates the roundabout outlined in red on the A53 junction, Shrewsbury Market Drayton Road. Next slide is the specifications as outlined in paragraph 1.41 of the officer's report to committee. Next slide, example of what the sign will look like. Next slide, location and block plan indicating 3 separate signs on the roundabout. You'll see them there, 1, 2, 3. And the final one is photographs of the existing roundabout with its vegetation and significant landscaping. No objections have been received to the application from statutory consultees, the town council or members of the public. With no adverse impacts, the recommendation is one of approval subject to conditions as set out in Appendix 1 attached to the report. That concludes my presentation of this application, Mr. Chair. Thank you. Mr. Chevy, councillor.
Sorry, yeah, anybody want to comment?
Recommend approval of the officer's recommendations.
Yeah, Mike issues first, sorry.
Yeah, I move that we accept the recommendation of the officers. There's no objection from the town council, so.
Anybody like to second that? Gary would like to second that. Anybody got any more comments? No, so should we go to the vote?
So
Are we all?
agreed one of these in principle before, haven't we? There's something similar's been agreed before now.
Yes. So if everybody's happy, can we all raise our hand to say we're happy with the recommendation? That's unanimous. Number 20, the roundabout junction in, well, Alderley Road, Adderley, Market Drayton. Reference 22/03791. Mr. Molyneux again is on the floor.
Right, thank you, Mr. Chair. Application is to erect and display 5 sponsorship signs placed on the A53 A529 Adderley Road roundabout. No updates. Application is presented to committee as it involves council and land and the application not in accordance with the council's statutory functions. I'll run through the slides. First one, site location plan indicating the roundabout on the A53 junction. Next slide, specifications of the sign as outlined in paragraph 1.1 of the officer's report. Next slide, the example of what the sign will look like, or signs rather. Next one, location and block plan indicating 5 separate signs on the roundabout in each of the 5 entrances to the roundabout. And finally, photographs of the existing roundabout with selection of trees planted on it. No objections have been received to this application from any of the statutory consultees or members of the public. However, Whittle Market Drayton Town Council supports the application. Adderley Parish Council object, owing to concerns with regards to potential for drivers to be distracted as they travel around the roundabout. With no adverse impacts and no objections is raised by the Shropshire Council Highways Manager, the recommendation is one of approval, subject to conditions as set out in Appendix 1 attached to the report. That concludes my presentation on this one, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Anybody like to comment? Or propose something?
Propose to accept officer recommendation.
Councillor Barrow says we want to accept it, and Councillor Towers is second it. Are we all in favour? Raise your hands. Anybody against? 10 clerks against. And Vincent has left the building, so. So, there you go. Where do we go from there? Do you want to come back, Paul?
I'll finish you go on.
Appeals and appeal decisions, Mr. Molyneux.
Extensive list there, but it's getting late in the day. I've got no comment to make, but I hope members have took note of the decisions made.
Date of the next meeting is the 6th of December, and before that, I think the chairman just said he wanted to buy every lunch, so make sure you're ready for that. Thank you all for attending and not falling asleep. Well, we did it. Thank you. Just closing the meeting down.
Just quickly, because you might be interested, the next meeting, the 6th of December, is the day before the council's case in the Supreme Court in London, which is in relation to a matter that came before what was originally Central Planning Committee, but is now obviously a matter under this committee's geographical area in Shrewsbury Greenfield. So it's 7th of December, the hearing, and it is live streamed and televised if anybody is so interested.
You put the correct Miranda?
No, gosh, no, barrister, but I will be down in London with the barrister.
I have
On the fact that they've
apologised,
submitted a new plan.
Shelley, I apologise.
According to Councillor Phillips from Town Council, they're in process with a new planning. Or reinserting the same plan to get the next 3 years on.
Oh, no, they've started with the
Oh,
next
okay.
document, yeah.
So that won't have any effect on the difference.
No, it's just the question of law that's the court. That's-
Right, all I can say after today is, I don't want to hear one planning committee.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, everybody.
All day.
Can we have some more feature designs?
Three. I can do anything.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, except for you. Not sure which one's gonna go. I think we proposed, no, can you have a second degree? No. I know what you meant, but I can't put small on them all.